I'm part of an experiment. I don't remember if I'm the test subject or the researcher. I don't know how to put in better words, but I think that I have become the subject of a study that I am conducting, or at least I used to. The backstory I am about to give you will probably make me sound like a horrible person, and I don't doubt that I am. I got so invested in finding the right answers that I shoved all ethical claims aside. In front of me, all I could see were the possibilities of finding true answers to questions humanity could only dream to find out. I saw awards, fame, and money, but if I'm honest, those weren't even my main goals. I just couldn't quench my thirst for knowledge, and it would have promised so much had we found the answers we were looking for with the study we conducted. A project that we called the Watch-Eye experiment. The base for our study was pretty simple. We had a problem we needed to solve, and exactly the right resources to tackle it. Our department is funded by big co-operations as well as the government. You might think what we do sounds illegal as soon as I tell you what it is, but we are actually under a lot more state support than you'd like to believe. And we are not the only ones. There are facilities like ours all over the world. The department I work in is the social department. As the social scientists of the research facility, we mainly focus on how to improve society by making use of the subconscious, something known as libertarian paternalism. What it means is basically institutions giving regular people a soft push towards acting as better humans, never by prohibiting or punishment. Instead, we make sure that individuals act morally good and right voluntarily. We conducted many studies, some very promising and some turned out to be more disappointing. You can't always win, but we were an ambitious group of people. The problem we were facing this time, the one we tried to tackle with the Watch-Eye experiment, was an ongoing question we received. To put it into more simple terms, what we tried to do was make individuals, regular human beings with a tendency to being criminal, not want to act like douchebags anymore. People who litter for no reason even if a trash can is nearby, or smoke cigarettes even if there are young children around. Break and steal state property. Start fights with others out of boredom and beat their faces bloody. Just typical trashy behavior. Of course, we're not the first social scientists facing this issue, and there are promising findings we were able to base our strategy on. A very simple solution has been proven to make individuals act more socially desirable. Something as easy as putting up pictures of eyes. Just a photo of a big eye can be enough to make someone feel observed, and that consequently makes them be cleaner, nicer, or simply not act like a bum. Very easy. However, only in theory, because could you imagine a world where there is a photo of an eye in each corner? Or cameras? People would catch on eventually. They'd get used to them, and it wouldn't work anymore. The base of the theory, however, was still interesting, and it made us think in new opportunities. If you make someone feel watched, they feel the need to act morally correct. That was something we could work with. We just needed to find a way to make them feel observed at all times, as if they were always in a social setting where being polite and proper was expected to a degree. Who cares if it really changes them, or if it is just an illusion to them, as long as it helps. That's the moral we worked with most of the time. That's the only thing that mattered as we were instructed. Our facility is connected to an advanced tech department as well as chemists and biologists who work on projects you probably won't hear about for the next decades. State-of-the-art technology and means. With their help, we were able to create a substance that could mimic the feeling of being observed. The Watch-Eye substance. Just something to drink, like cough syrup. Completely non-invasive, and the effects were presumed to be short-termed. It was exciting, but none of us dared to try it, as we didn't know whether there were side effects we hadn't found yet. So what we needed to do was test our new invention with a number of willing participants. From a pool of a particular target group, felons, criminals, troublemakers, we selected a random sample who received a decent compensation. First, we ran them through a screening, made sure there were no signs of mental health problems with them or their family, especially no schizophrenia or other schizoaffective personality disorders, no anxiety, no drug abusers. In general, nobody with an already high level of paranoia. We are not monsters after all. Then we invited them to the laboratory and conducted interviews. Asked them about their day-to-day behavior. Showed them scenarios and asked how they would act in the situation. Like if they were at the beach with a can of soda, would they just leave it there or try to find a trash can? Of course they all lied. Giving socially desirable bullshit answers was expected. But we needed to find a way to actually be able to prove if their behavior was changing or not. The substance would make them feel observed, but we had no way of knowing if it actually made them act better. So we had to get a little invasive, all for the sake of science. The tech department built microscopic cameras and microphones into our participants which they weren't aware of. We had to make sure that any feelings of being observed were due to the substance and not due to cameras. As I said, this experiment will make me sound like a horrible person, but as I mentioned, they were compensated generously, and we could never have known what this substance would really do to them. The cameras were harmless in comparison. Have you noticed something different in your surroundings? Can you give an example? On my sheet it says that you live together with a partner. Are they acting differently in any way? She started biting her nails, her gaze focused on the table between us. He is having strange thoughts. He knows what I do all the time, and he doesn't seem to like it. Has he made any comments that made you believe so? No. She started looking around the room. Anything not to make eye contact with me. I can hear it. She finally whispered, I can hear his thoughts. And I know that he sees me everywhere I go. He wants to do something awful to me. He can see me now. Jillian was one of our more stable participants. At least in the beginning. She had a tendency for reckless driving, something we ought to change with the watch eye substance. Other than that, she had her life in order for most parts, meaning we didn't expect a drastic change in her behavior. That is until we started seeing with her eyes. Jillian lived together with her boyfriend. Both of them were in their mid-20s, and on the outside they seemed like a decent couple, but not only, on one occasion, did we observe domestic violence. I wish we could have intervened, but all of this was top secret at that point, and can you imagine how people would react if they found out that the government was funding research like this? That was when I still cared about that. After that last interview with Jillian, she had been acting completely exemplary. When she drove her car, she did it with such a level of precision and carefulness. It was astonishing. She became the perfect conscientious person, and even the domestic violence decreased. But Jillian also acted more paranoid. She hardly left her house anymore and would lock herself up in the bathroom. Not even her boyfriend was able to get her to talk. This was not supposed to be a side effect, though. The watch eye substance is designed in a way that doesn't make you feel controlled. It is supposed to give you the feeling of being in a social setting. A healthy participant should not be affected negatively by this in any way, except for a slightly increased stress levels, and even that was rare. But something went wrong. When I tuned into Jillian's screen, I was looking at her bloody hands. We saw everything from her perspective, so at first it was difficult to identify what was going on, but after a moment, we noticed the man lying on the ground, and the knife next to him. When we rewinded the footage, we saw the horrific process that had led to this point. Jillian was shouting at her boyfriend, pushing him away, and it looked as if she was going to become violent towards him again. Something that seemed odd, as she had been entirely peaceful since being dosed with the substance. First, she started mutilating herself. When the man tried to make her stop, she started attacking him. When he was unconscious, she kept repeating something. Now you can't see me. This continued for a while. In theory, we weren't allowed to intervene, but we called an ambulance anonymously. Jillian only had a few small scars. We brought her to our facility for further checkup after she was released from the hospital. The man was hurt severely, but he survived. But as I mentioned before, Jillian was one of the more stable cases, which is making me even more scared because after I went home last night, I noticed something different. On the walk to my car, I kept seeing shadows, which I wrote down to being tired, or because I was looking at violent pictures all day. But it wouldn't stop when I started driving. I had to stop at least 10 times to check if there really wasn't a person sitting behind me on the back seat. I could have sworn I saw someone in the mirrors, but every time I turned around, I was alone. It continued when I got home. I thought I saw someone in front of my window. Then I heard a knock on the door, but there was nobody outside. I told myself that I was imagining things, that I had been too focused on this study, and now I was getting paranoid. But it simply wouldn't stop. I couldn't eat. I couldn't shower. I couldn't do anything. Finally, when I went to bed, I had to keep the lights on. Darkness only made it worse, but it was no use either way, because when I tried closing my eyes, I felt a crowd of people standing around me, watching me closely. The following day at the research facility, I brought up the topic with a few of my colleagues. I mentioned feeling like somebody was following me to my car yesterday and that I kept noticing someone in the car with me to see whether anyone else was feeling strange since the experiment had started. They all assured me they were fine and that I was probably just exhausted. I started feeling more at ease until I spoke to Elijah, one of the other leads in the project. It's not that uncommon to start taking over side effects of participants. You see them on the screen all day. Talk to them. Write about them. Don't worry. You will be fine. Yeah, maybe I just need to cut back a little on the caffeine, I said with a forced smile on my face. Yes, that would definitely be healthier. You drink that stuff like water, he laughed. But you know you can talk to me if you feel strange. Thanks, I honestly appreciate that. I'm just feeling weird, I said. Of course, I realize that this study can be a little draining. Did you feel like anything else was different yesterday? Well, except for some lady trying to get a free ride with you? He said jokingly. I laughed along, and then made an excuse to leave. I had never mentioned that the person I noticed in my car was a woman.